feds, and that is something that anyone that serves in any of the section chief positions that will report out later on have to have those certifications to even be in the EOC. One of the things that is very important to us is how we respond to the community, and the chief has put in some time ago a COVID-19 response unit, and he can get into more specificities as it relates to that. We will also look to put in another COVID response because we have seen the demand for service and calls change that we are normally accustomed to. One of the big factors that we're looking at is looking at the calls, looking at the types of services, and you're going to hear the types of services that are currently being demanded from our community. The economic recovery after this pandemic, and we move out of this, and hopefully we take every precautionary steps to flatten that curve. Economic recovery is very important, so staff has already started looking at drafting a document that the city council can consider as a framework for the purposes of your April 15th meeting. We are looking at ways to expedite some of the capital projects that have been on the shelf for a significant amount of time. We are looking to move forward with some of the projects that are critical to the economic conditions of our community. We are looking at moving forward with construction of fire station and police department and other municipal facilities. And we know that there has been and will be monies that will be coming from the federal government to emphasize the investment in infrastructure. And obviously we know that our utility operations is something that is critically important to us, and looking to work with our lobbyists, both at the state level and federal level, to make sure that we get every opportunity to renovate or reconstruct the facilities and improve our infrastructure, as that is going to be key as we move forward. So we are looking at what the recovery efforts would be after this, and this will be a topic for discussion. We're putting together some bullet points for the board to consider, and then move forward with drafting a more comprehensive plan and how we can expedite some of the things necessary to put people back to work and move some of these critical pieces of infrastructure forward. So, Madam Chair and members of the council, that concludes my report, and I will turn it back over to the moderator, Ms. Noel.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. With that being said, we're going to now move it over to our section chiefs for the EOC. We're going to start with our operations chief, John Curd.
Good evening, Council Chair, Mayor, Mr. Evans. This is John Curd, Interim Fire Chief. I'm serving as the Operations Section Chief for our COVID-19 incident. The most current information, which was just updated at 6:30, shows that the U.S. now has 238,820 cases of COVID-19, and that is double that of any other country. Currently, there are 5,758 total deaths within the U.S. In Florida, we have 9,008 cases with 144 total deaths. There is a steady daily increase, but one of the trends that we're seeing is the overall percentage of new cases is decreasing. That's not to say the total number of cases are decreasing, but the percentages. We were seeing early on, we were having the number of cases double daily. Then it was doubling every 2 days, 3 days. Now we're seeing increases of 10% daily. So we are happy with what we're seeing as it relates to the curve. However, in Palm Beach County, there are 737 cases, 705 of which are residents, 30 being non-residents, and sadly to report, we have 27 deaths in Palm Beach County. Based on the current modeling that is available to us, we are expected to see the apex of positive cases sometime between April 15th to May 1st. We are working with legal on preparing to add temperature readings to employee screening protocols for all essential employees reporting to work. We are also working with the Palm Beach County Health Department on guidance for source patient investigations. as we do understand we have dealt with one very specific case in the city, but we intend to see other cases in our city and in our departments. So we want to make sure we have good guidance on how to handle these moving forward. We have received great response from the community on donations of supplies and meals, especially meals for the elderly. So a big thank you to our community for banding together and helping out your first responders in your community during this crisis. We are coordinating NIMS and ICS training as mentioned by Mr. Evans so that we can bring everybody together on one platform and work as one cohesive unit. We have put foggers into service to disinfect all fire, EMS, and police vehicles in order to prevent further spread of COVID-19 to our first responders. We are experiencing some problems with our supply chains with ordering personal protective equipment. There has been issues where minimum supply orders had to reach certain dollar thresholds or certain quantity thresholds that unfortunately a community of our size could not reach. So we've tried to band together with other municipalities in Palm Beach County to try to meet some of those thresholds to obtain PPE. But unfortunately, we were informed by one of our suppliers that the Chinese government has taken over all mask manufacturing and sales, primarily that of the N95 mask, and has stated that they will not ship to the United States, they will only ship to Europe. So we are working very closely with our suppliers. We have some great leads and supply chains that are still available to us, but this will prove to be challenging as we move through this pandemic. Palm Beach County has opened a COVID-19 drive-through testing center at 15 Ballpark that most of you all are aware of. That was opened on March 31st, 2020. Registration and appointment scheduling is required for that site. Individual requesting testing will be approved through a telephone screening, and criteria will include persons of symptoms, exposures, and risk factors. When the testing site opened on the 31st, it was reported that 281 people that had scheduled at that time had scheduled appointments. 255 were tested. On April 1st, 2020, testing site screening hotlines would no longer accept any other calls. Nearly 2,000 appointments have been scheduled through Saturday, and they were inundated with somewhere around 300,000 phone calls of individuals looking for testing. Again, that testing will only be provided to individuals that are symptomatic and who meet the screening requirements as needed for testing. With that, Palm Beach County is looking to establish a second testing center in southern Palm Beach County due to the demand for COVID-19 testing. Palm Tram is now limiting the number of people on the buses to no more than 20 passengers, and we are looking to develop a video for the public on first responder response in PPE to address and explain what and why it is we're doing what we are in fact doing. It looks very intimidating when our units respond to a home and our firefighters are in full PPE. It is automatically presumed by the community that that is a positive case, and that can be no further from the truth. The PPE is being used in an abundance of caution, not only for our community, but for our first responders. So we want to put some messaging out on what that looks like. An update from the fire department, which is under operations. On March 19th, we put a specialized COVID response vehicle into service. To date, the COVID response unit has run 51 COVID-related calls, and that is increasing daily. Because of that demand, Fire Rescue is preparing to put a second response vehicle in service. Yes.
Chief Kurt, I'm sorry. I'm hearing some noise. I'm going to ask again if everyone can please have their phone on mute.
I told you, I just made it up.
We need all phones on mute.
Miss Noel.
All right.
Miss Noel.
Yeah.
Can you have the capability of just muting everybody other than the presenter?
Yeah, I can do that, but I need to know what the phone number is for the speaker, so that I can mute everybody, and then have their line only unmuted.
Okay, well, let's do that.
So,
I mean,
Mr.
everybody
Kerr,
don't have a mute button on their phone?
They should. That's why I'm asking, because it's going to be a little easier if everyone else has it muted. I apologize.
Yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt the call, but I think it was probably interfering with his communication. I'm sorry. Chief Kurt, if you can continue, please.
Yes, and I apologize. I'm in the IT conference room, so I don't know the number to this particular unit. So, where was I? Fire Rescue is preparing to put a second response vehicle in the service due to the overwhelming number of calls and the anticipation of peak call volume. There are no reported cases of positive test results in fire rescue. However, there are 2 employees that are currently awaiting test results and are self-isolating. All fire stations are still on lockdown to outside visitors. However, there's been no impact to the 911 service that we provide. A strike team has been established to visit all ALFs, senior centers, and independent living facilities, as well as visiting St. George's Church on a regular basis to address issues, concerns, and ensure the facilities are complying with executive orders and our city manager's emergency orders. We also are coordinating with the Red Cross, which has modified their response protocol, and they are only evaluating need for Red Cross over the phone, as they will not report to the scene. From Leisure Services, we have posted signs and secured all parks and beach access points. We are performing periodic inspections of those parks to ensure safety issues are being addressed. However, the park lights are being left on for safety and security concerns, but to our community, that does not mean the parks are open. All parks are and will remain closed until further notice. We're having additional signs made to replace those that have been vandalized, destroyed, or stolen. I plead and implore with the community, if you see signs of beach accesses or parks being closed, please don't dispose, damage, or vandalize those signs. They're put there for a reason, and it is coming at a city's expense to replace those signs. We are providing meals for our senior population that are in need of meals. Palm Beach County Senior Services is currently servicing 56 seniors that are registered participants of the senior program. 48 have been cleared to pick up meals at the North County Senior Center, and 8 are being provided meals by Palm Tran Connect. We are coordinating with Meals on Wheels, Feeding South Florida, and Cheney Brothers for others that may be in need. Of promising news, we are also working with the Agency on Aging that is trying to partner with a local restaurant to provide local meals to our seniors. That is a report out of operations for operations, fire, and leisure services. I would like to turn it over to our police chief, Nathan Osgood, to report out for the police department.
Good evening, all. For the police department, let's start with the external, what we have done externally. We're still have police functions as usual. We are doing our daily food purchase and distribution to the children, to the kids. Since they've been out of school and they on the street, we encounter our youth. We hand out food packages, sandwiches to our youth, and this is throughout citywide. And we're doing the same with our seniors. We're going door to door with our seniors, and we're giving the seniors care packages. We have we're continuing to enforce our local and county state ordinance and order closure of beaches, parks. We have went door to door at the condos to give, we hand delivered the executive order explaining the executive orders as far as closing the beaches and to stay inside and no social gatherings. We get a lot of phone calls asking why can't we go out and hang out by our pools? Why can't we go out and basically we got family in town. We want to go out by the beaches. We get a lot of phone calls from our residents, and we have to explain to them why they cannot go out. We are monitoring and encouraging cooperation from all to pay attention to social distancing, to be mindful of crowd gatherings. We continue to get calls for large crowds and disturbances, and we continue to get crowds dealing with restaurants and businesses, and we have to go out and talk to the restaurant owner because they're getting mixed messages as to whether they can have can they have food at the restaurant. I'm sorry. So we have to go out and talk to our restaurant owners and managers to make sure they adhere to the policy, do takeout only, and that includes the governor allowed the liquor stores to do business as takeout only. Sometimes that give us a large line, a crowd. They come in and they wait in line just to buy alcohol beverages. Speaking of alcohol beverages, buying food, we had a complaint of a daiquiri shop doing business in our city. And daiquiri meaning that they have these little alcohol beverages served at the Slurpee. Come to find out, they did not have a proper license to run such operations. So we went out and closed that business down.
You can't understand.
We're continuing with our police activities of doing joint police operations with the city of West Palm Beach, the PBSO, the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. We have done operations in the 800 block of West 5th Street, 6th Street. Those are two highly visible areas where we had countless of police shootings over the past year. So we went out and we went door to door with every resident on the two blocks, talking to our residents, talking to our community, letting them know that we're here for you. If you got any complaints, talk to us. We had about 40 officers out in one day to make this contact between those two streets. We also took it over to the 1600 block of 13th Street, that's over in Federal Gardens, and we did the exact same thing over there by doing sweeps and going door to door, talking to our community, our residents, letting them know we're here for them. If you got any complaints, if you want to drop a name, we want to hear what you want to say. We don't want our community hiding in the houses because people are dominating the streets. At the same time, our community, we're talking to them about the COVID-19. We're telling them how important it is for them to stay inside and to monitor news when they can and pay attention to the directives given by the governor and therefore by the city. Since January 1st, we have seized 39 guns off the streets. Some of them have been illegally carried. Most of them are, well, all of them have been illegally carried. But we received 39 guns from suspects who we believe to be committing crime in our community. In the 1000 block of 27th Street, we ran an operation, continue to run operation at JW Liquors. We get a lot of complaints of loud music at this location, and we go there and we shut the music down. We ask them this, they're within city ordinance, they're within the state law as far as the music, but we just have a conversation with them about playing the music loud to be mindful of their neighbors, and they have really complied when we go out and talk to them. We have received complaints regarding the Marina Grand. We have a derelict boat situation going over there. We have 8 sunken and partially sunken boats over at the Marina Grand, and just to give you an update of what we're doing over there, these complaints have started since January. And since January, this is a long, tedious process. Our Marine unit have cited the owners of these boats, 2 boats, and there's a process. You have to give them 21 days to adhere to this citation. The citation is not a criminal citation. It's basically a citation for the owner of the boat to appear in front of a magistrate. And then they take another process on how can they remove the sunken boats or the derelict boats from the waterways. And that process, they can tie up the system a little bit with that. So we're still moving forward. We're trying to get these help moved. We got help from FWC. And we also have help with a federal grant to pay for removal of these boats. It's a very expensive process. It's $150 a foot just to tow a float boat from the water. If the boat happens to be sunken or partially sunken, it can be $350 a foot or even more to tow that vessel from the waterways. So even when we get approval to remove these vessels, there's a cost that comes with it. And maybe some of the costs may go to the owner. Part of it could be grant. The other part may fall back on the city. The part that we have with the vessels, if we have to pay for these vessels removal, we can put a registration lien on the person's driver's license. And so therefore that person, when he goes or she goes to renew their driver's license, they'll have to pay a lien back to the city or whoever paid for that vessel to be removed. We are continuing to monitor quality of life issues. We have had several quality of life issues. Let's talk about bulk trash, junk on the side of the street. We found some, and we take pictures of them. We document it. And Monroe Heights, over down by also Avenue S, and down by the Acre Homes Park. We take the pictures. We send them over to Public Works to let them know that we have trash on the side of the street that we want removed from the street. And this is a situation where it's an eyesore, and so we want to continue to do our part to help keep the community pretty and beautiful. Internally, we have some things that we're dealing with internally. Sorry with the COVID-19 again. We're doing cleanup of our stations, the police department. We have ordered all police personnel to wear their PPE gear at all times when dealing with the public. We are specialized in disinfection equipment for our vehicles. We sanitize our vehicles at the start of each shift, and we're telling our officers to do it each and every call as well. We're providing training, universal precaution at the PPE gear. We have initiated remote activities, isolated period. We have quarantine. We talk about training for quarantine, outdoors. We have our briefings for police roll calls on the outside, and we move it at various locations. Sometimes it can be over at the police department on the outside. Sometimes it's held over by the gas pump. We're not doing many of our things that we have done inside. We do it on the outside. Only thing we can't do on the outside is we start booking our prisons that we still have to bring into the Sally Port. We're having all of our personnel to make sure that
Can I say something?
training. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So I think we do have people that are constantly logging on, and so we definitely need to just continue to repeat to people to put their phones on mute. And going forward, when we have more people, we need to make sure that all of the presenter phone numbers are given to Ms. Noel so that she can have them and just unmute those people as they need to speak. Because this number is available to the public, people are probably calling in at various times and not being aware that we could hear all of the stuff going on in the background. So everyone needs to mute their phone, those of you that are on there. Thank you.
And matter of fact, and this is Marcia, matter of fact, I do agree with you, Chair. I did get the number for where Chief Osgood is calling from. So I will mute everyone's line, and then I'm going to allow for him to speak. And then after he's done, for each speaker, before you begin, I just need the last 4 digits of the call of the phone number that you're calling from. If you can provide that to me. Okay? I'm muting everyone right now, and then Chief Osgood, I'll give you an opportunity to continue. 1 second. All right. Chief Osgood, you should be able to speak now. Chief Osgood?
Hello?
Marcia?
Just one second. Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, we can hear
I can't.
you.
Okay, I'm just going to finish up, and we have initiated all police personnel to finish up with their ICS testing and training that they need to do, which is 100, 200, 300, and 700. And I think Mr. Evans spoke about that earlier.
Okay, thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
Okay, next we have our logistics section chief, Ricky Little.
On number 0735. Good evening, Mayor, Council, the Evans, Ricky
Just
Little.
1 second. I'm going to need a second. I'm sorry. I have to find your number first. Say that one more time.
0735.
0735. I'll let you know when it's okay to speak. Just 1 moment. I'm sorry.
We can't hear the conference.
I can't hear him.
Hello?
We can't hear the
Can
conference
everyone hear?
going on.
I can't hear Ricky Little.
I'm waiting on Mr. Noel.
1 moment. Oh, no, he's still here. Okay, so I guess I was unable to mute everybody and just have him speak. I apologize about that. I guess we'll just continue as we have been. Mr. Little, you can go ahead and continue. I apologize. I tried.
Nope.
And
No
as
problem.
we hear noise, we just remind people because people are coming on in the middle of this, so we just randomly say to mute your phones until we figure this out for another time.
Agree.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Mr. Evans, Ricky Little, Logistics Section Chief. I'll keep this brief. We have been able to source and procure face shields for the police department. We have also been able to source and procure PPE for both fire, police, and general staff. And as the operational chief stated earlier, it is very challenging. We're in the process of sourcing this and procuring all day long, and we believe we have the order in place. And by the time we go to pay for it, the supplies are already gone. So it is exceptionally challenging, especially since China has decided to sell their supplies only to Europe. And I'll leave it at that. That's all for logistics.
Next,
Marcia, are you
Planning Chief Bailey. Yes.
All right, this is Terrence Bailey, Public Works Director, acting as your Planning Section Chief. I too will keep this brief. Currently, the Planning Section is working on our first incident action plan with all the section chiefs and department directors as we demobilize normal operations and transition to a full emergency activation and operate only core city functions, as Mr. Evans outlined. City Hall, the library, Lindsay Davis, Barracuda Bay, the beach, and all parks facilities are closed. Public Works and Parks operations are currently suspended while we are keeping online strike teams in order for our logistics and operations sections to react to municipal concerns as they arise. The planning section has developed systems and processes for resource allocation and control to project department needs to respond to this pandemic in real time. As well, planning has developed a data warehouse for the collection, evaluation, and dissemination of information for the command staff. Finally, the planning section and the command team has begun meeting with a framework for hurricane season 2020. While we are currently in this pandemic, we cannot take our eyes off of the summer as it begins to bear down on us, and we anticipate bringing a resolution to City Council as we do annually at the appropriate May City Council meeting. And again, the planning section stands ready to continue to support the administration in this operation. And that's all.
Thank you. We're going to move it over to our finance section chief, Mr. Sherman.
Good evening, everyone. This is Randy Sherman, the Finance Director, Finance Section Chief. I'm going to give you a brief update. For the last 2 weeks, the Finance Department has been working 50% of the employees on, 50% of the employees reserve. It has worked out well for us. Yesterday, we completed the payroll and got that fully paid, and with the notification that we were to go 100% remote. We actually also did the accounts payable run yesterday. And we are now effective close of business yesterday, starting with this morning, we are 100% remote. Our next payroll and accounts payable runs will actually be the week of April 13th. That next payroll should cover the new raises for IAF and SEIU. So if you get any questions in that regard, it's our full intent to include the raises within that pay period. As far as phones, just to let everyone know, we are monitoring and answering 3 phone lines. So we have our 845-4040 Finance Administration line, our 845-4050 Utility Call Center line, and our 845-4019 BTR line. This week we have actually taken over 200 phone calls on those lines. And as far as the utility customer service group, they have been able to, despite working remotely, we have closed out 14 accounts, and we have actually initiated 15 new accounts as we continue to monitor those lines and service the customers. And that's the conclusion of the finance report.
Thank you, Mr. Sherman. And lastly, from our EOC section chief, the legal office, Ms. Nguyen.
Good evening, everyone. Briefly, just to give you an update on what we've been doing, the legal department drafted the extension of the emergency declaration, which the manager executed yesterday. He will execute every 7 days until this event is over. We drafted emergency order number 20-02, which the manager signed, I believe, on Tuesday, closing City Hall and creating a virtual City Hall. And we drafted emergency order number 20-03, which are rules for the use of communications media technology for public meetings during a public health emergency. Those are the rules that will govern your city council meetings should you have one in the future. The legal office is 100% remote at this time. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. We're going to move over to public communications. As you already know, I am serving as a public information officer with Walter Stevens for our EOC regarding COVID-19 related information. Since our last public briefing with you, our efforts have continued in the same manner, in that we're still pushing out vital information frequently through all digital and electronic means available to us. We've been utilizing our social media accounts such as Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and our city webpage and emails. To date, across our social media accounts like Facebook and Instagram, our numbers or our reach has grown to now 33,000 people, and we have sent about 50 notifications since we began the EOC activation, sharing both with the public and employees in various forms. In particular, most of our communication is focused on written notifications, mainly covering state and city-related orders. We've shared notices on topics such as protective measures that we're taking for the vulnerable population, the public and private gatherings, council meeting changes, closures of certain establishments, the beach closures, changes to city operations, airport screenings, the governor's request for disaster declaration, and finally, our most recent notice, which was the death of the city employee. In addition to that, regarding concerns over the death of the city employee who tested positive for COVID-19. The city has dedicated a hotline for employees who may believe that they have been exposed, or who believe or who have questions or concerns regarding that matter. They can call our helpline at 561-812-6590, Monday to Sunday between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. There will be a live person available to answer their calls. They will be asking them for basic information so that we can keep an inventory of our calls, so that in the case that anyone may have contracted the virus, the information collected will be used to assist the health department. And then, of course, members of the public can continue contacting us through our city's email, which is the city manager's office at rivierabeach.org, or they can call us at 561-812-6597 regarding COVID-19 and city operations. As a brief announcement, as we continue to pump out information on COVID-19, I would like to also lighten up the atmosphere a little bit and kind of give you all a heads up as to future communications that we'll be having on community-related activities. As you know, the 2020 census is already here, and we also have put out information regarding the Community Value Survey. It is a big initiative for us, as these surveys are meant to positively impact our community both now and in the future. And so we will be working within the next week to push out a lot of information on those two initiatives, as they are critical to our city. So with that being said, those are the end of my remarks. I'll then move it over to our next item for risk and safety, if Ms. Sullen or Ms. McCoy can speak on that.
Good evening, Council. Marie Sullen, Human Resources Risk Manager. The Risk Management Department continues to support our city department as it relates to COVID-19 and a particular item. Since our emergency operations been in place, the Risk Management Department have been assisting departments with respect to specific medical issues that employees may have, to basically help them with the process and how to direct employees with respect to work report and work status and remaining off work. In addition to that, we've been working with our EMS Chief McCarthy with respect to the Palm Beach County Health Department, where our EMS employees are transporting patients who may have the COVID-19. So we've been working alongside with Chief McCarthy to keep a database and also assist with that. We've also assist with PPE for our city employees. And
can you hold on
one second. Everyone on the call, please mute their phone if they are not speaking as the presenter, please. Please mute your phone. Thank you. Go ahead. Okay. In addition to that, we have been working on and will be releasing a process specifically geared towards vehicle maintenance with respect to cleaning vehicles as they receive the vehicles in the bay from our police and fire department, to assure that any exposure is limited, or exposures is not there. So we are implementing a specific process specifically for that department. Addition to that, we have continued to maintain the database for the NIMS 100, 200, 300, and 700 for citywide as employees complete their NIMS certification. As Mr. Evans mentioned, the risk management team and safety officer has been maintaining the database. We've also sent out the EAP and information regarding to the Aetna Teladoc to employees in case employees want to reach out to someone and speak with someone or their family members. The EAP is available to all city employees and also their family members within their home. And that would be our report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sullen. And the last of city staff that will be reporting is from Information Technology, Mr. Parzielli.
Thank you, Mr. Noel. Good evening, Madam Chair and council members. IT has been working to provide the city with remote access to the applications and systems they use. We've been reconfiguring staff laptops that staff had so that they can access all the data that they need. We were fortunate enough to have a number of loaner PCs, and we've configured almost 40 of those, which are out with staff currently working remotely. We've been working at configuring the phones to be able to provide offices with multiple ringing cell phones and the opportunity for voicemail that gets left to be emailed so that you can click on the email and listen to the voicemail. For support, information technology is supporting the remote efforts of the city, so a number of our staff are set up at home to be able to support our customers and remotely through Screen Connect. We do plan to have a staff member, at least one staff member in the office every day to support our on-site fire police requests, as well as any incidents that require that we physically touch the computer to get it back online. That concludes my report, unless there's any questions.
Thank you. All right, so that concludes staff reports. Thank you, everyone, for bearing with us as we went through a few technical issues. But we're going to leave the latter part of tonight's call to final remarks, comments, or questions by the elected officials. With that being said, before we begin, I'm going to ask again for any and everyone who's possibly just joined us, if you can make sure to have your phone on mute. So we're going to go ahead and begin with our mayor, Mayor Felder.
Yes, I just want to, no statements or questions, but just want to give you guys a good shout out for the wonderful job you're doing, keeping us informed in our community in this time of our crisis. So just a shout out to you guys. That's it for me.
Thank you. Next, our chair, Chair Miller Anderson.
Good evening, everybody. Just want to say as well, I appreciate all of the hard work that everyone is doing. I know that, there are times where people, have things to say in terms of not acting quick enough or not doing things in timely fashion. I appreciate Mr. Evans and his team providing continuous coverage and updates regarding what the city is doing and how we're operating and providing the public with a number of updates so that they know as well what's going on within our city. And I do want to certainly send my sympathies out to the employee that passed away the other day. This virus is very serious, and I think people are realizing it very slowly, but we really need to stay in the house if you can do so. It's very important that we follow all the rules and make our public safety workers' job a little easier by not having to enforce something that we know we should be doing anyway. Mr. Evans, for the going forward with our telephone system, I do probably realize there's a lot of the public that's participating this time, and that's what we want. We want to be very transparent with what we're doing. And so I just hope that in the future we could just take a look at how we can maybe control the noise level in the background. I know there's a number of different types of systems that's out there. So we'll continue to make it better. But I appreciate you all working hard on getting this job done. I had a question about that phone number that you gave for the employees. That phone number, if they are sick, that's the number for employees only to call, not for the public, correct?
That is correct, Madam Chair.
Yes.
That number is only for employees, but if we get calls from the public, we are taking those calls and forwarding it on to the appropriate department. So regardless if somebody in accident called the number, they still would talk to a city employee that will route them in the appropriate direction.
Okay, and then I also want to just be very clear, for employees that are not feeling well, they should feel at ease to know that because everyone has said basically if you're not feeling well to stay home, do they need to worry about not getting paid?
No, we have modified the pandemic pay policy, but our status and our goal from the beginning of this deployment was to maintain as many employees on paid status as much as possible. And the pandemic pay policy allows for that. Plus, there is, with the new federal legislation, a bank of 80 hours that the employees are able to draw down to. So we do have our employees right now are on paid status. Even our part-time employees are getting compensated for the hours that they would normally work, even if their operations are shuttered.
Okay, and I wanted to make sure that the public was aware of that and the employees understood that it's okay to stay home and not have to worry about not getting a paycheck. Could someone please mute their phone?
Could someone mute that?
Because I know that, right now everybody's concerned about, being able to pay their bills and being able to support their families. But the city of Riviera Beach is thinking about their employees and making sure that, one, that they're safe and making sure that they are comfortable enough to stay home if they do not feel well. And that's really all I wanted to say at this time. And I know you all know that I've been sick some weeks ago, and I'm still dealing with that. Unfortunately, it's pretty tough trying to get a test. And so you may be walking around with it with symptoms or no symptoms. And so just take all precautions and stay home if you can. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Next, our Chair Pro Tem Botel.
Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Good.
Yes.
First of all, I also want, thank you. I also want to extend my sympathies to the friends and family of the coworker we lost. It's a tragedy, and I just hope that none other of our staff people become infected. Second, I wanted to offer the fact that when we do conference calls like this here in my building, we have two separate numbers, one that is called in by members of the board and another that is called in by the owners in the building, and they allow for different methods of communication so that the board members can speak, but members of the other community can just listen. So that might be something you want to investigate. The third thing I want to say is that I've been working with the Friends of the Riviera Beach Schools and with four of our principals, Principal Clark from JFK, Principal Porter from Lincoln, Principal Battle from Washington, and Principal Granger from Bethune on a project that would allow for families to pick up those free lunches by way of an Uber driver from the school. Those families, only those families that do not have transportation. So I'm asking people, if they do not have transportation to pick up the food that's available at Lincoln Elementary School, would they please contact their principal? Those four principals have responded, and I'm working with them to be sure that the people who don't have, our community members who don't have transportation to pick up food for their children, will be able to get it delivered by an Uber driver. I think I wanted to thank Chief Osgood in particular for taking care of the derelict boat situation. I was able to forward the last email from him on that topic to a number of my constituents who had concerns about the derelict boats, and I very much appreciate the fact that in spite of this greater problem that we have, we're still taking care of the little things that do still matter to people. And finally, I just want to say please stay home. I haven't been behind the wheel of my car for 22 days now. I'm getting all of my groceries delivered by Publix, and it's working out just fine. And I don't intend to go out in public until this thing is over. And I hope everyone else is staying home as well as much as you can and be safe. Thank you to everybody. Thank you so much to Jonathan Evans and your staff for doing a wonderful job of keeping everybody informed. I know it's not always easy, and people sometimes don't even seem appreciative of the work that you do, but please know that I do, and I'm sure that my colleagues feel the same way. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, Councilman Lawson.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall. Again, I want to just echo the sentiments of my colleagues in offering condolences for our lost staff member and to her family. I wanted to ask Mr. Evans just a couple of quick questions that some residents have reached out to me about. Do we have a number of diagnosed residents in the city as of right now?
We don't have a number, and if we did have a number, I think Chief Curd could possibly assist in providing that number.
In relation to the number of positive cases in Riviera Beach, the Florida Department of Health, as of yesterday, has not registered a single positive case for a resident of Riviera Beach. Now, that doesn't mean that there's someone in the city that is not positive. That may be from another state, and that also does not include individuals that are quarantined in self-isolation and have results pending. But as of yesterday, there is no confirmed positive case on Florida Department of Health's website, which lists city by city the positive cases.
Excellent. And Chief Curd, if you could also explain, because residents, I don't want them to be confused as to us losing a staff member, that individual is not a resident of Riviera Beach at the time, because I guess there's kind of confusion when it comes to us not having any positive cases and then losing a member that actually was diagnosed with COVID.
That's correct, Councilman Lawson. The employee was not a resident of Riviera Beach. And one of the things that a lot of people have to understand as well is the coroners right now in both Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County are inundated with individuals that have passed away. They have very specific markers for the deceased, whether or not it was natural causes, homicide, suicide. There's very specific boxes. There is no COVID-19 box. So there's been some concerns about the numbers and the number of deaths not being accurate. What we are finding out is there are coroner offices that are determining that a lot of these deaths are deaths of natural causes, and then they list out associated symptoms or associated conditions, whether they were diabetic, whether they had heart conditions, whether they had COVID, whether they had any number of other contributing factors. So that's still being worked out from the coroner's office on how they're actually coming up with some of these numbers. But we do not have, again, to reiterate, an active known case from the health department in the city of Riviera Beach. Again, there are persons under investigation, which are people that have flu-like symptoms that have been asked to stay home for 14 days and self-monitor. There are facilities where you have individuals that are awaiting testing, but we are not aware of a positive case at this time.
Okay, excellent. So if you could just post it on that as well. And Mr. Evans, the next one, I guess, would be for Chief Osgood. The gated communities, what we're seeing is a lot of these students are using kind of the gated communities, the pools, the hangouts, as a hangout spot for them, being that they're out of school. Is it possible for us to work with the property managers and to work with the complexes? Because we don't want this to continue to fester and be an issue, especially with our kids being out of school. And the complex, especially Marsh Harbor, is one of the ones that a lot of students are congregating at. Is it possible to work with them and maybe limiting pool access, maybe having some restrictions that they can put in place?
Absolutely, Councilman. That actually was articulated in the governor's latest executive order, and maybe this executive order 2091, and then the previous executive order that basically shut down community pools, gathering areas, those types of things. So we will work with law enforcement as well as the associations to make it abundantly clear that those public spaces are to be off limits and there's to be no situation where people are gathering in large groups, etc.
Perfect. If we have to go to the extent to just shut down these community pools, I think that's where we need to, because we've already closed down our pool our city pool. So I think that the communities need to follow suit, and then that also can assist. But then if we could have some additional presence, even in the gated communities, so I know that we have a large presence here throughout the communities in Monroe Heights, but at the same time, over on Singer Island, I know that they're monitoring the areas, but the gated communities, because they're gated, I don't know if they're traveling into the complexes as much. So if we could also just make sure we have the same presence, because that's just what I'm seeing is a lot of people are just congregating over there.
Absolutely, and I even know some city managers have gone as far as in certain parks removing basketball goals to really send the message that they are not to be congregating in large groups, et cetera. But we will work with the property managers and increase our police presence to inform, educate, and get people to stay inside.
Okay, and then I had another question in regards to permits. Are permits being delayed currently? Two residents asked in reference to redoing their roof and doing work on their property. Are there any delayed process when it comes to the permitting? Are we still pushing through with these processes? What's going on with the permits?
If Ms. Jacobs, if you're on the line, if you can speak to the permitting operations, because we did talk briefly about our plan to look at that particular operation a little differently.
Sure. Good evening. For the record, this is Deirdre Jacobs, Assistant City Manager. Councilperson Lawson, with regards to permits, we have put permits on hold as of yesterday. We were initially accepting permits for emergency work activities. However, beginning yesterday, we decided to put those on hold, and the entire staff from Development Services is working remotely. The only things that we're doing right now is for the permits that were already in place, we're holding inspection activities. So if it's a new permit, we're not accepting any new ones right now. I believe it's within the 14-day period that we're working to see how things will go about. We'll start re-examining what we'll do with regards to our building department. And it may be at that particular time that we decide to start accepting new permits.
Jacobs, you said 14 days?
Yes, right now we're beginning April 6th up until April the 20th. We deviated from the process that was in place. There was a process in place where we were accepting permits for emergency work activities only through a drop box. But as of yesterday, we transitioned from that, and the Development Services staff is working remotely. But the only activities they're doing involve inspection activities for permits that are already in place.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I just wanted to let a couple of residents know that. And I know that with our city hall being closed, that they wouldn't be able to drop them off anyway. So I'm not sure what their process or what steps they would take. But essentially, we're not going to be taking new permits for 14 days as of right now, and then we'll reassess that at a later date, correct?
Yes, that's
absolutely.
We were accepting emergency permits as of yesterday, but that was put on hold. We had a drop box in place where we were accepting permits for emergency work activities. However, that ceased in an abundance of caution because we did have staff in the building to accept those permits. So all of the staff have been asked to go home, and they're working remotely from home. But the only activities that are taking place would be inspection activities for permits that were already in place.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Ms. Jacobs. I appreciate that. And then Mr. Evans, again, Mr. Evans, I just wanted to thank you as well, just for putting the staff in place and having everything done and keeping in communication with us. That's the biggest thing, and just letting our residents know that we're all going to get through this together. So I want to also let our residents know that are listening that even though Chief Kurtz stated that there's no active cases that are reported, right now we just opened our testing site as of Monday. So there's been minimal testing done in our city. So I don't want them to kind of, lower their guards in regards to making sure that they're doing the 6 feet distancing, making sure that they're social distancing from each other, and making sure we continue to push through for the next 30 days. So everyone, I appreciate everyone that's doing a great job. I'm praying for the family that we actually just lost, one of our staff members, and all my colleagues as well. Continue to see you guys soon. Thank you, Mr. Evans. I appreciate you guys.
And
Mr. Lawson, this is Chief Kurt. If I may just interject for a moment, as we were having the discussion, the Florida Department of Health has updated their site as of 6 o'clock. Riviera Beach has 5 PUIs, persons under investigation. So that means that individuals have been notified and they're being monitored because they have been in contact with somebody who is positive, traveled from China, or identified by the CDC as part of an airline ship contact investigation. So those very well could become positive here shortly, but in complete transparency, there are 5 PUIs within the city.
Okay. So there are 5 PUIs, no positive cases, but just persons of interest as of now.
Yes, we have persons of interest. We're going to be working with the CDC. Many times they will just give you general information. They won't give you specifics as it relates to the individual and where they may be living. But we do know for a fact, as the update, and this may be as a result of what's happening at the ballpark of the Palm Beaches, that we do have 5 PUIs in the city.
Okay. And Mr. Evans, last question, I'm sorry. Would you be able to just kind of, with the employee that passed away from the COVID, could you just kind of give a timeline of what happened? Because there's a lot of residents that are just asking and trying to understand what happened with the process and what were the steps taken. If you could just kind of give an overview of that so that they could be clear on what steps you took.
Well, the individual's last day of work with the city of Riviera Beach was on Friday, March 20th. They then communicated to staff that they were not feeling well and that they were going to go ahead and stay home. They never returned back to work. We received notification from HR that there had been a test administered and there was a positive. At that time, that was March 27th. On March 27th, all individuals in that department were ordered to self-isolate, to separate, and await further instructions. They have been remote since that time. The individual was deceased on the 31st of March, and that's when information was provided to us. As we found out the information, we have gotten a chronological timeline that's been provided to the health department. The health department is now moving forward with doing their source patient investigation. Once that information, they're going to be calling the individuals in the department to obtain additional information and then discuss if they are exhibiting or experiencing any symptoms. If that's the case, they'll work to get them the appropriate testing and medication. This has been transferred over to EMS Chief McCarthy. Chief Kurd may be able to give a little bit more specificities as to the conversations with the health department. Chief?
Yes, sir, Mr. Evans. So we have contacted the health department and we had a conference call, which we had some discussions about the case that we had here in our city. So the health department is looking to conduct source patient investigation, which they haven't been doing because now that the virus has been deemed community transmissible, they're no longer trying to go back and identify where exactly it came from. We're well beyond that point. But because of the characteristics that were specific to our case, we've provided them with some information, and they were going to be following up with individuals that worked in very close proximity with the source patient to determine whether or not a further deeper investigation needs to be done, whether or not testing needs to be done. There's an array of questions that are going to be asked by the health department of these individuals. Because of the HIPAA-related information, we're not going to be privy to a lot of the content, but if there are additional personnel that need to be contacted and questioned as a result of what they're calling the spider web effect. One person is in contact with 5 people, those five, and then it goes on to infinite. we will provide them with the contact information as requested by the Department of Health so they can complete a thorough investigation. But please be mindful, the Palm Beach County's Health Department has been completely overrun and overwhelmed by this pandemic. That is normally a very small department that is now trying to manage a whole county, and this situation isn't unique to Riviera Beach. So they're working multiple cases as fast as they can, and as soon as they provide us with any update, we will keep our incident commander abreast of what those results are.
And to that point, one of the things that's very difficult with this process is it is protected information. So there's only certain information that we were able to get. I was not able to find out the exact individual it was or their gender until I found out that they passed away. So obtaining that information has been quite challenging, as there is some HIPAA protections associated with that. But the health department can operate in a different category than we can. But as soon as we find information and we're able to present it, we will move forward with presenting that information to the community and those that may have been impacted. But Chief, can you also briefly go into the contact or the exposure, because that's, I think, what some people are concerned about.
Yeah, so as it relates to contact and exposures, there's very specific definitions that have been put out by the health department on what is deemed a contact. There's also consideration that needs to be given when you had contact with an individual who has subsequently tested positive, or in this case has passed away. One of the main questions that's asked was the source patient symptomatic? We have to understand that when we come into contact with individuals that are not symptomatic, the odds or the chances of them transmitting the virus are very low. Once the individual becomes symptomatic, meaning once they start coughing and sneezing and are exhibiting symptoms, now the possibility for transmission jumps off the charts. So you're really looking at a source patient from two perspectives. Were they symptomatic during the period of contact, or were they asymptomatic? And that drives how far they go down into this spider web with their investigation. So those are some of the questions that they're going to be having with the names that we've provided to determine, did they see the patient symptomatic? Were they not symptomatic? And were they in contact? Just casual contact, if a 6-foot distance was maintained, is not significant. But if you were in a very small room for a prolonged period of time and not at a 6-foot distance, that is now a significant contact. So it really gets difficult when you start looking at this to determine all of those factors, whether or not those were present, to determine what the course of action is going to be by the health department.
Excellent. Okay, Chief Kurt, thank you so much for the updates, Mr. Evans. Thank you. Would it be possible now, with all the updates, to see if we can get expedited testing just for everybody that she may have been in contact with? And I know that, Chief Kurt, you're talking about the web effect, and that it could possibly be expanded out to multiple people, but at least within our HR department that she was immediately surrounding. Is there any possibility that we can just get them tested in an expedited fashion?
What we're doing right now, Chief Kurt and I actually have a follow-up call after this call to talk about two local entities that may be able to assist us in providing an opportunity for us to get testing done in our community and provide us the same test results in the same amount of time than going through the situation over at the ballpark of the Palm Beaches. So we're trying to explore that avenue. If we can secure that, that's going to be the probably the optimal testing solution that we will go forward with. We've also secured another type of test that should be
en route within the next couple of days that is a rapid test that can be able to tell us if there is somebody that potentially has carried the virus. And so that test can give us information in about 15 minutes, and then additional testing would have to ensue. But we've already procured that. EMS chief is working on that, but we are looking to do whatever we can to get our employees into testing facilities one way or another. So we're looking at alternative options versus the testing center that's at the ballpark of the Palm Beaches.
Awesome. Again, thank you guys so much. Thank you. That's all my comments, Madam Chair.
All right. Thank you. So we're going to move on to Councilman McCoy.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Noel. I wanted to ask Mr. Chief Osgood a couple questions. He mentioned the abandoned vessels, derelict vessels. This provision that you're speaking of, is this something that we can implement for vehicles?
No, I don't think so, Councilman. I believe that's a little bit different as far as the laws on it, but I'll take a look at it a little further with vehicles. Do you have any abandoned vehicles on the highway or streets that you want to tell me about?
Yeah, I'm seeing them every day, so I'll certainly share them with you and the manager when I get offline. And I wanted to ask Mr. Evans and Mr. Chief Osgood again. So now that we're in this situation, I would kind of imagine that there probably is going to be, or should be, at least in my opinion, an increase in police staffing, because I'm seeing, just like you mentioned, a number of people that's hanging out at various places, be it gas stations and convenience stores. And now that we have these orders that's come from the governor that allows for essential services, it's kind of really difficult to differentiate what's actually essential, because, for some stretch, someone always can kind of portray that they're going to a business or they're doing business, but I don't want it to be a free pass for folks to continue to go out and loiter. And I want to see if we could certainly be cognizant of that, but also make sure that when we're out addressing these essential businesses, that we as a city and our police officers and our frontline code enforcement understands what that means to actually do business. And it doesn't necessarily restrict a person from actually being in a business, but actually conducting business with the public. And I want to make sure that we're focusing on, that. Additionally, is there a possibility or anything we can do that we're under a state of emergency by the state and also from the city, that these essential businesses such as the liquor stores and the convenience stores that's operating outside of these hours have any kind of require them to have any kind of police detail or armed security personnel? Do you know if there's any latitude for us to require something like that?
I would have to defer to the city attorney, and we probably would have to research that.
Yes, that's correct, Mr. McCoy. If you give us an opportunity to look into it, talk to you a little bit further, and do some research, that would be appreciated.
Okay, yes. And I would certainly see if we can't require it, I would definitely like to recommend it, because I noticed Walgreens have now put armed security guards, and then Walmart has a whole new fleet of security personnel. And I just want to make sure that, we're definitely trying to keep people deterred from loitering and hanging out, and you still have the regular panhandlers that's walking up and asking you for money, which kind of, gives the sense of uncomfortability when you want to go into a business, when you have to actually pick up a prescription or whatever. So I would definitely like to see if we do that. And Ms. Wynn, I wanted to kind of talk to you offline. You said earlier in your statements about the council rules governing meetings, you said it's in the draft form?
No, I believe we sent that out to you. I can resend it. It's the rules that will govern. It's the way we conduct our meetings, the media technology for our meetings until we get back to normal.
Okay. Well, I'll look for it. I don't know if I've seen it yet. And also, I wanted to kind of have the conversation with the manager and the attorney about the treatment of the 6 to 8 self-isolated employees that potentially may have come in contact with the deceased city employee, how that was being handled from the city's perspective. Is this is something that we're handling through, I guess, from the insurance perspective? I wanted to kind of talk offline about that, be it workers' comp or whatever that, however that works. But I definitely want to get some information about that. And I'll bring it up later in an outside conversation.
Okay, no problem.
Next question I had was for Mr. Sherman. You spoke about 15 accounts that were open and about 14 that was closed. And I'm believing you're speaking of utility accounts. Is that correct? Mr. Sherman?
Yeah, that's correct.
Is he still with us? Okay, so I think I recall, I don't know, someone mentioning how we...
I am.
Well, I guess my question is, these accounts that are being closed, now that we have these new digital meters that actually read by hour, are we expediting the return of security deposits when there's a case of a security deposit that needs to be returned? I'm sorry? Well, Mr. Evans, can you just
we're
follow up with that for
processing
me?
refunds about every 2 weeks.
Okay.
So we're processing refunds.
Okay. All right. Well,
Can you hear me?
that's we'll follow up offline, Mr. Sherman.
We're processing refunds every 2 weeks.
Okay. Good enough. I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't an excessive delay. Like I thought I heard at some point it takes over a month or so to get back a security deposit. And, I don't want to I don't want to see us hold people out as, obviously funds are going to be strapped. Now, I just was reading an article as we were on this call, and this is for the attorney and also the manager and also the police chief to kind of be aware of. So now that we've seen this, this most recent order from the governor that now suspends evictions and foreclosures, I want us to kind of be cognizant of it because, we get called about everything and kind of be aware that our frontline staff knows how to handle these when we have to go out and have our police officers essentially mediate landlord-tenant matters and how that impacts, the calls for service and that sort of thing. And what should our role be in that? Which I really believe minimal, if at all. But certainly be aware of that. That's typically not our role to intervene in those kind of situations. But certainly be aware of how we address those when those come up, because I imagine there's going to be some problems that may arise because I think it was either 45 or 60 days that I've seen that these eviction proceedings and foreclosures have been suspended from even being filed. So I don't know what, disgruntled tenants and landlords may result to, but I certainly think we should be aware of that. And that's all I have. I wanted to, I had some other things and they kind of came out and were answered, but I certainly want to give my condolences to the family and the staff members who were affected directly by the loss of our city employee, and also thank Mr. Evans and the staff members for their diligence and help on this, and commend you for all the hard work. So thank you so much, and I appreciate it. And whatever else I have, I'll reach out to you, Mr. Evans, in phone call or email. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Councilwoman Lanier.
Yes, hello. This is Councilwoman Lanier. I just wanted to echo the sentiments of my colleagues. I really want to thank the employees, as I always do. The employees of the City of Riviera Beach who are some of the employees can't work from home. Some employees have to go to work, and I appreciate the fact that people are putting their literally lives on the line for us to be able to keep the operations of the city intact. And to say that, I want to also say to give a huge thank you to Deirdre Jacobs, who's the interim city manager. She is in charge of utilities. She's in charge of HR. She's in charge of building and permits. And I really want to thank her, because I have asked her numerous times throughout the week that, are you still at work? And she says, yes, Councilwoman, I'm still at work. And people who are still trying to work, who are still going to work, we have to give them the props that they have, because, you know, I'm working from home, but everybody can't do that. But all that being said, I also want to ask Mr. Evans or even the Chief Hurd one of these questions here. Last night, DeSantis signed a new order in place for the state of Florida, and it kind of disregarded the first order he put in place about stay at home. But one of the things that it consisted of was that churches now have the opportunity to be able to be open. So I want to know, given the fact that the city of Riviera Beach, based on the number of people in this city, and based on the fact that in Palm Beach County we have more churches per capita than any other municipality in the county, how are we looking at churches in terms of being open to the public?
I can speak briefly on it, and then if anything from law enforcement, churches are permitted, but they definitely need to adhere to the recommendations that were provided by the governor in previous executive orders, as well as the guidelines from the CDC. We are really encouraging our clergy members to look at remote platforms, to look to have, if there is services outside, anything that we can do to eliminate the large gatherings. That's where the community spread happens. And then when we go back to do when the health department goes back to do a source patient investigation, it's so hard because we congregate at those facilities. So we are educating and informing our religious community. From conversations that we've had, have been very receptive. So we will actually go back out to them prior to their services this weekend, starting as early as tomorrow. And I'll get with Chief Osgood if we can make contact with the ministerial community to inform and educate and even assist any way possible, so they adhere to some of the guidelines. But the executive order said that was a essential function. And I think we all agree it's an essential function, but the way in which it's handled, we need to be conscientious of. We're ordered to stay at home, social distancing, washing hands, no physical contact, etc. So some religious institutions have even gone to outside services or even had drive-through services to where people park in the parking lot and the pastor is on a flatbed of a vehicle and utilizing a microphone to communicate to his members. So we will go out and educate and inform and hopefully have folks voluntarily comply.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Evans. I appreciate the information. I also wanted to say thank you to Mr. Walter Stevens. I don't know if he's on a phone call right now. Mr. Walter Stevens is our public information officer. He has ensured that everything from Facebook to Instagram to to Twitter, that we all stay informed, because the city of Riviera Beach, of course, as Mr. Evans said, they have all gone remote. So everything that we receive, everything that we get from the public is through social media. And I want to really thank Walter Stevens for being able to put out this information, being able to let us know at every step of the way what's going on. Also, I want to thank the Chief of Police for his commitment to what they call community policing. That means that he is checking on residents and he's ensuring every day that children who are not in school are eating food every single day. Also, to Chief Hurd, he's making sure that seniors every single day are being able to eat. So it is the residents and the city of Riviera Beach employees who are ensuring that this little 8 square miles that we are trying to protect ourselves and we're trying to ensure that it doesn't come, because we know it's coming, that it doesn't come to our city. And also to Rashay Huff, who's assistant to assistant city manager to Rashay. Thank you so much for what you do. And Mr. Evans, a big, big, big thank you to you and all that you do and your staff. We appreciate the fact that you keep us informed and that you make sure that every single day you call us and let us know what's really going on in the city, and we can appreciate that. And thank you to the residents for listening, and we will see you on April 15th for our city council meeting.
Thank you, Councilwoman Lanier. All right. And on that note, the communication will continue. As a final announcement, I would like to let everyone know that we will be holding a community teleconference call next week, April 9th. Our first one was held March 26th at 6:30, which is a Thursday like tonight. So the public can have an opportunity at that call to ask questions and get answers. We thank you all again for taking the time tonight to join us on our public briefing, and we look forward to staying connected with everyone. And if there's no further remarks, I believe we are now adjourned.
Thank you.